years. It's the same cycle as governor and the other statewide offices. And the current auditor, Joe DiNucci, this is his 24th year in office. You know, I think that's a problem. And I'm also giving myself a 10% pay cut on day one. And I'm refusing a state pension because I don't think that politicians should have pensions. Civil service is another matter. So as part of that process, I'm committing to saying we're going to reduce this. And everyone that I'm going to be hiring is going to commit to taking pay cuts, and we'll do other necessary measures within the department to reduce the cost of spending. Technology is not expensive. It's not hard to build a website. So again, the state wanted to give me the money, I mean the information when I asked for it, but they wanted to charge me $6,000 for just some of the data because our state public records law allows them to charge for information. And I went to the comptroller's office and I met with the deputy comptroller and the director of financial reporting. I said, gentlemen, this is not right. You've told me it's all in your state data warehouse. They said, yep, within 24 hours, everything's in this great computer we have. I said, so why can't we, the people, get at that?
Who paid for it to begin with.
Right. And they had nothing to say. And then they said, well, we don't really have the resources. We don't have the people. It's not on our initiatives. I stood up at the conference room window and I pointed out and I said, well, MIT is right there. Harvard's a little further down the river, and BU's over there. Do you think maybe there's some business professors, some grad students? This would be a great graduate project. Come in and expose how government operates and bring the technology folks in and build a project. And they looked at their shoes, and it was really disappointing. And I said, I told them.
A lot of people doing that with you, haven't you?
I like to be blunt. I'm polite, but blunt. And we have too much government that's costing us too much. And that's why the other thing that I forgot to mention, you mentioned question one when we started. I am also a co-sponsor this year of ballot question 3, which has just been certified for the ballot. So we're putting a ballot measure on to roll the state sales tax back to 3%. Now 3% was the original 1966 sales tax under Governor Volpe.
I believe, isn't there a minimum, isn't there a mandated or a, by law or by statute, that's the minimum that the tax could ever go down to?
Correct. 3% because what they've done is they've collateralized bonds and other government financial instruments. So 3% was as low as we could go. But it was also the original sales tax. So we've got that certified. It's on the ballot. It'll be question 3 this November.
And when do you expect the scare tactics to come out like they did for question 1 in 08?
Probably, I'm going to guess after Labor Day. I mean, it's summertime. A lot of people are not necessarily paying a lot of attention to politics. A lot will happen. Again, as you know, I'm in a primary election, so those of us that are involved in that type of thing are going to be focusing on that. But a lot of people are on vacation. You're here in the Berkshires. You certainly see a lot of vacationers out enjoying, the beauty that we have here.
Sure.
And So
let me guess, Kamal, if we got the sales tax back to 3% or roughly cut it a little bit more than 50% for the on-budget 55% of our budget, I assume we wouldn't be able to have a cop, a fireman, or a teacher left in the state. All the kids would have to go to New Hampshire, Connecticut to go to school. Isn't that what they're going to tell us? Yeah,
well, they can't go to New Hampshire because New Hampshire must be in ruins, having no income tax, no sales tax.
How do they do it?
So I don't know. But, I mean, the fact is that Beacon Hill continues to grow. And you look around here in the Berkshires and throughout Massachusetts, as I've been all over the state, communities are hurting, local aid's being cut, and Beacon Hill continues to grow. And that's a problem. And the only way we're going to fix that is with actual transparency. And I'm the only candidate for auditor from any party. I've met them all. I've seen them all speak. The only one who's focusing on transparency is the core issue, because the job of the state auditor is to expose government innards so that the people can understand how it operates and how well it operates. And I think once we have that information, we'll have, they say knowledge is power. Well, then you'll have the knowledge to go to your elected officials, your state rep, your state senator. I'm not sure if Smitty Pignatelli's out here or not. I met him recently again, and you go to them and say, look, I know where the money's going, and it's not right. I don't approve of that. And that's what we need to be able to do.
Well, we have a few minutes left. I think we have more time. We were granted more time. When you get more time in your life, we had a few more minutes in this segment than probably I was estimating earlier. See, that's why I needed an auditor. If you were paying attention to the time like you are to the state budget, we would have known that. I should have been doing that. So, hey, but that's good. We get a couple more minutes in our interview. So that was the thing I was concerned with, Kamal, was, okay, now we know that we spent $1,500 for the proverbial, hammer. What's the action item then? What are we going to do with it? And we have to march that paper down to our elected officials and say, why did you do this?
Right.
Is that our only recourse, probably?
So the state auditor's office is fundamentally, it's a bully pulpit, right? It gives people the leverage and the information they need to be able to affect change. But if you ask any elected official, they will tell you the thing they fear most are angry voters. And they will also tell you that it only takes a handful of voters to show up in their office about one issue to change their minds on something, or at least to change the course of their minds.
Why don't you repeat that?
It only takes a handful of angry voters to show up at an elected official's office. Depending on whether you're talking federal level, state level, local level, the metrics are a little different. But I talk to congressmen and I talk to their staffers, and they say if we have 20 people show up in our office on one day about one issue, that will change the course of the congressperson's decision. If we have 100 phone calls on the same day, those are the things that make the difference. And so what you need to do is you need to empower people and give them a reason to go down to their government office. Emails don't really make much of a difference because they're cheap, they're free essentially, so they ignore them, they get deleted or filed away. Faxes are the same thing these days because they all go into the electronic system.
Then go right into the shredder after that.
Right. What you need, you need to get a piece of paper and you hand sign it and you mail it to your elected officials and say, I'm concerned or angry about this issue. Or you go to your local office and you sit there and you say, I'd like an appointment with, you can call ahead of time if you can. It literally only takes a handful of people to make a difference. And I've talked to school committee people about this, same thing about how school committees work. I've talked to city council men and women and select, board people. They said if more people would actually show up and express their concerns, it would change their government. And that's really what it's about. It's the idea, I hate to sound too geeky here, but it's the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, right? Heisenberg had sort of said in nuclear science, in quantum mechanics, you can't look inside the atom without affecting it because of the forces involved. It's the same thing. You cannot bring sunshine into government without affecting it because people will know that they're being watched. The contractors, the vendors, the employees will all react and become more efficient.
When you think about, Kamal, that just the viewers of this show could have an absolute and real impact on their government because only a few people is all it takes to call up and actually say, come on now, Senator, Congressman, Representative, whoever you might be, Mayor, we've got to get something changed here. Why don't we spend the next minute or so as we end our first segment of Outfront TV telling us a little about how to get in touch with your campaign,
Perfect.
What folks can do, and whatever else you'd like to say.
Okay, super. Again, masstransparency.com is the best place to go. You'll find our email, our phone, all that other information there. That's where people will find out what we're doing. It's also where they can sign up if they'd like to get involved and form their own citizen committee to audit, for example, Pittsfield or whatever other community here in the Berkshires. That is powerful because that leads to what we talked about, is again, going down to your mayor, your other elected officials. Call our phone number. Our phone number is 781-31-AUDIT. So that's 781-312-8348. And they can call that number 24/7. They can email us. They can go to the website, sign up and get involved. We want to give people the tools and the information they need to become more involved in their government. And that's really what it comes down to. And I am a Republican, but this is a nonpartisan issue. This is good government. And good government is about civic engagement. And I've had the pleasure of talking with a number of senior people inside the current administration, and they've said, we really like what you're talking about, but we don't have any executive sponsors, and that's what the auditor's office would be. I've talked to people who are in charge of, senior directors in transportation and other agencies, and they said this is just the kind of idea that we need so that the people who consume our services will be more involved, because they said, we're producing these things. We don't necessarily know if we're doing what they want us to do.
I'm so skeptical that the current administration means that, but that's
well,
heartening
I'm
to
not
hear
talking
anyway.
about the top, right? I'm not talking about the Deval Patricks,
Okay.
the Theresa Murrays. I'm talking about, the people
The
are
real
actually
workers,
the workers,
the real
the
people
workers, the
doing the work.
managers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that makes more sense because our current governor, I can't quite imagine saying no to no to any pay cuts or spending cuts. Taxes, sure, raise them. It looks like we're about ready to move on to our next segment. It's been a real pleasure to have Kamal Jain with us today. He is running for state auditor. You can learn more about him on his website. Go ahead, tell us one more time.
Masstransparency.com.
Masstransparency.com. We're going to take a brief pause in just a moment here to show a couple of announcements, and then when we come back, it'll be Mike Regas from the Mass GOP. This is Outfront TV. Thanks for being with us.